Hello and welcome to Film Music House. I'm here with Ilan Eshkeri and Raphaelle Thibaut. They are both composers and they will be discussing the scores of their docuseries, Ilan with A Perfect Planet and Raphaelle with Secrets of the Whales. I'm Louise Boyle. I'm the senior climate correspondent for The Independent. Okay, so to begin, I think if you can both just tell me a little bit about the series and how you came to be involved.
Go ahead, Ilan. I'll go ahead.
Okay, great. I'll go first. So, A Perfect Planet was, I was approached and I was a little reticent because this has been my fourth collaboration with Sir David Attenborough, and I just felt like if I was going to do another one, I wanted to make sure that there was that there was a really good reason to do it, that I was really genuinely inspired and motivated to do it. And what really captured my imagination and my passion on this show was that it was so focused on climate and that there was an episode within it that was on human beings, and David had never done that before. And so I felt almost a social responsibility to sort of take this on, and in whatever small way my music contribution would help the cause for looking after the planet. I wanted to grab that opportunity.
So I'm Raphaelle, and I've been a film composer for 6 years now. And Secrets of the Whales is actually my first large-scale TV series. So very excited about that. I've been approached by the team at Red Rock Films a couple of years ago. Me and my agents have been approached by them, and I was supposed to write maybe one episode because they were thinking about having multiple composers, like one composer per episode, and I ended up scoring the whole show because they were happy with what I did in the first episode. So I was very thrilled about that, and to me it was a very special project because I've always been, like a lot of people, very much fascinated by the whales, not just the animals, but just the musical aspect of these animals, because music is definitely a major part of the way they, communicate, like their language. And I've been always fascinated by this underwater world as well, because this is a place that I will never be able to go because I had serious issues with my hearing when I was a kid. And if there's one thing I can't do, it's just go underwater, like even like 1 inch underwater. So I was always kind of fascinated by this underwater world also for that reason, and it's always been very mysterious for me, and so that was a very special project for me.
Raphaelle, I'm skipping ahead here, but just from what you said there about the whales, it seems the case, but I had read that Brian Skerry, who's the photographer on the series, had said that scientists have been studying humpback whales for about 50 years and they still don't really understand why they sing. So obviously that does seem like something that you've sort of built into creating the score.
Yeah, actually, I knew that, music and singing was a big part of the whales world and, in general. I didn't know about the humpback specifically, and the way they, the humpbacks and all the whales actually use the coral and the water, the ocean, to broadcast their music and their singing, to communicate with each other, and that their songs can be heard by other whales or species on the other side of the ocean. And I had no idea about that. And I think that, it reflects the fact that there's still a lot of mystery around those animals, and a lot needs to be, discovered. And I was even more inspired by it than I thought I would ever be when I started the project. And of course, as a composer and as a French person as well, I was it was hard for me not to think back, you know, about this film in the 80s, The Big Blue, this French movie, and this incredible score by Eric Serra, who recreated those whale sounds, you know, out of synthesizers. They're not real whale sounds. And it was hard for me not to be tempted, you know, by just doing, you know, the same thing, not exactly the same thing, but doing something around this singing and this music that these animals create. So that was a big part of my, you know, my approach when I first started working on that project. Yeah, for sure.
Lovely. I suppose let's
I love that was a reference for you, because I remember that movie had a really big impact on me. You know, in my younger years, and I had one of the first soundtracks I ever owned, and
me too.
Still really love that score and that film. It's a real masterpiece.
Did you know that he actually recreated everything out of synth, and that there's nothing natural?
I did not know, so I'm so delighted to have that bit of information. That's really amazing.
I suppose a question kind of unavoidable from the past year that we've had. How has the pandemic sort of affected how you created your scores in a sort of a practical way? Has there been additional challenges for you both?
It was, yeah, definitely for me. I think, you know, there's one aspect of it is that you're creating music, and that tends to be a pretty lonely job. You sit in a room and try to come up with something and then try and make it fit the image. So that aspect wasn't different, although it was a little bit more challenging for me, because I was homeschooling at that time my 4-year-old daughter. So that made my time quite limited, or at least I didn't get long stretches. I just, you know, get sort of 10 or 15 minutes here before I had to go back. So that was challenging. But really the biggest problem was recording. And Raphaelle, I don't know if you had to record during that time, but I recorded the first 2 episodes just before the pandemic, and or just before lockdown came in the UK. And then after that, the schedule just went out the window, because everything ground to a halt, the editorial, everything ground to a halt. And then we needed to work out how we were going to record the score. And fortunately for me, I'd always wanted to take a more contemporary approach, which meant that the score didn't rely on having a symphony orchestra all in a room together. But there were a lot of orchestral instruments in the score. At one point, Iceland was still open for recording, and we were able to record groups of 30 strings. So I was able to do that with, and that was I'd recorded there before, because a friend of mine, Atli Orbison, also a great composer, he lives out there, and had got me to record out there before, and he conducted it for me. So that was fortunately quite easy. But then all the brass and the woodwind instruments we recorded with musicians in London, but we had, like, you know, the leader of the London Symphony Orchestra French horns was playing the part in his living room. And you know, we have the technology now where you can have a digital acoustic model of whatever space you want, Abbey Road Studios or a church or whatever, and you can take that recording and you can place it in there. And in fact, you could place it in a particular location in that room, and it's very convincing, but it is incredibly labor intensive, and it's not cohesive rhythmically. Even though they're playing with a click, they're not playing with each other. And same with the tuning. It is in tune, but they're not in tune with each other. And so these real subtleties all had to be worked on with technology. And so I don't think that you particularly notice it when you hear it, especially because a lot of the contemporary elements cover it over. But piecing that all back together was hugely difficult, and very, it took an incredible amount of time. But you know, thank God I have a really amazing team who were able to help make that happen.
Yeah, for me, I think it was very different because it was not really question at the beginning, that we're gonna have live players. So it could have been, I think, but the problem is after COVID happened, because I started scoring in March last year. So it was literally, I started working when the pandemic really started to hit the US really bad. And so I think that in our minds, it was not even an option at that point. So everything has been done in the box, as we say, for Secrets of the Whales. There's not a single live instrument in the score. So I would say that it was both a blessing and a real challenge, because the challenge was that I had to work around my music so much, all the time, because I knew it would not be recorded. So it had to sound authentic and perfect, right at the beginning, like right there. And so for me, it's been challenging because I had to sometimes change the melodies, change the instrumentations, just because it didn't sound, real enough to me. So I spent a lot of time doing that. But it was also a blessing, I guess, because it gave me so much freedom, to play around with, all the other elements that I've added to the score. The score is hybrid, like it sounds mostly orchestral, but I actually used a lot of electronic elements to enrich it and kind of making up, for the fact that there would not be any live player at all. So it was great to be able to play around with all these, contemporary electronic sounds along with the orchestral arrangements. I think it led us to this versatile hybrid score that we were very, happy about at the end. But and then, I mean, so of course it's always better to work with, human beings, and I missed that, dimension a lot, and I didn't get to meet anyone. I mean, I'm pretty sure that it was the same for you, Ilan. Like, we didn't get to meet the production team. We don't get to meet the filmmakers. Like, I mean, I didn't on my end, and it was tough because it was a big project and a lot of people were, involved, and but I think we will meet one day. But it just feels weird, that we've been working with these people for more than a year now and still haven't met them in person. But the good news is that we are going to have a live show for Secrets of the Whale next year. So there's going to be a live orchestra. So playing to the pictures, with like 60, 70 players. It's going to be a tour. So it's going to be super exciting. And I think we're going to make up for, what we missed at that time around. But yeah.
I think one of the challenges, because of course I had the same thing. I'd fortunately met all the directors of the episodes and the production team before lockdown happened, which I think is really helpful, because technology allows for so much communication, but I think especially with music, it can be difficult. I think it's really important to be in the room with people, because music is the thing that you need where words won't do. It's music expresses, especially in film and television, it expresses something that words and language can't. And so I get so much from sitting in a room with a director and a producer, and before they've even said a word. I mean, Raphaelle, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but I've written a piece of music for a film and thought it was absolutely perfect, and I've started playing it in the room with the director and the producer, and 1 minute in, I'm like, I know this is completely wrong, and you don't need words to know that, and so not having that kind of communication makes the job longer and harder as well.
Yeah, I agree. And getting, immediate reactions on people's faces, like it's just a reflector of their immediate emotions, right? And you cannot get that in an email, nor in a Skype or Zoom or whatever. So I totally agree. And this relationship that you develop with the filmmakers in the same room while you're working, not just for the screenings, but sometimes you just improvise some stuff together and you see if it works out. And this is such a wonderful and paramount dimension of our work, and it's hard, as you said, Ilan, like it's a very, very lonely job already. So if we miss this, like, and if we don't have that, it makes it even more closed, and so yeah, it's definitely harder.
The both series, I think when I've watched them both, they really are sort of so compelling because they capture the personalities of of the animals, of the species, and you get this sort of sense that they're sort of in some ways just like us. And I just wonder if when you're creating the music, if you watch the footage or you watch it ahead of time, do you sort of see these animals as characters in the score, the way you might if you were scoring something for film and television that had actors in it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, I certainly do. I think that for me the scenes were so different, and and so I'd look at a scene and I'd be able to say, okay, well, this scene with these ants, they've got a really limited amount of time to go and get a bit of food before they get burnt to death by the sun. They've got to drag it back into their thing. And I'm like, that's like a heist movie, right? It's like a short film version of a heist movie. And so I'd look at each scene and see what the narrative of it was. Every story has a beginning and a middle and an end. And then yeah, you'd sort of anthropomorphize these creatures, but I think the balance is, especially with documentary, with fiction, you can really push the emotional boundaries, but if you do that with documentary, you run the risk of making the audience feel like they've been emotionally manipulated, and if they feel that, then the authority of the documentary begins to crumble. So there's a fine line. You don't want to push it too far. So I'm just always watching for that, the balance of those two things.
That's such a good point. Yeah, I guess that for the whales, like the whole point of the show of Secrets of the Whales, I think it's just to emphasize the fact that the whales are like us at so many levels that we don't know, and that they have societies that are very similar to ours, and they have emotional lives that are very similar to ours, and these are very sophisticated cultures, and it's like a mirror of ourselves, and they isolate themselves by language. Identity matters to them. They have parenting techniques, they have feeding strategies, techniques that change depending on where they are. So all this really I was not expecting, because I related so much more than I thought I would, and obviously I think my music illustrated that. And I mean, I guess it was like little stories, and all these family, small family stories that we get throughout the show. For example, this grandmother teaching the grandchildren how to hunt, or this mourning mother who that's carrying her dead baby for days because she can't let go because she's too sad, or this orca that's feeding Brian Scary at some point. That's like she's basically offering him a fish because we don't really know why, but probably because she thinks that might be hungry, it's too tiny or whatever. But it really helped me to see them as characters, like I would see characters in the movie. And I was not expecting that at all from a documentary about whales. And I found it really fascinating.
Does that change then? I mean, but you kind of touched on this before, but, you know, with nature docuseries, there's often this is sort of soaring, epic, orchestral sound that sort of overlays the whole thing. And you, when you see scenes like, for example, with the whales, you know, the mother mourning with the, you know, her calf, how do you sort of create that intimacy, you know, that really draws the viewer in?
Well, I'm trying to, I've tried to be consistent, you know, so I worked, you know, on one episode at a time, but I really tried to be consistent in a way that was approaching these big epic moments as opposition to those very intimate moments. Like you're very close to a family moment that is very, intimate. And I think that's almost instinctively, it was not even a creative choice. I just went for solo strings, you know, for all of these little small family intimate moments. But it's I think it's still epic in a way, but I had to be very mindful because I didn't want to overstep, you know, what was going on and be too obvious, you know, about the emotions that we had there, exactly as, you know, Ilan mentioned earlier. And it was tricky sometimes because, you know, you want to illustrate a moment that is both surprising, disarming, sad, but majestic. So you have all of that has to be in the queue, but you know, because it's intimate, it has to be small. So that was very interesting / challenging. Yeah.
But you know, I do think you do have to work quite hard though, because there isn't, the characters don't have dialogue, so there isn't anything on the screen to help you. It's like scoring a silent movie. I mean, obviously there's sound effects, but there isn't any language to help give information, and we don't have the subtleties of understanding the expressions in the animals like we would other human beings. So you do have to do quite a lot of work. So, which is great because it's a great musical opportunity as a composer, but it also means that you've got to work. You've got to be really good at what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, the narration, I think, I found it helpful when there's narration, you know, but even then you have to be careful because, you know, there's so much going on at the end, even in those, I find actually, and in my experience, like even in those intimate moments where you have narration and you have the sound effects and you have these nature sounds that are, to me, already music, you know, so it's always kind of, you know, there are many things at the same time you have to work around with, and it's true that there's something you have to, like something that's lacking, you have to make up for with the music, and exactly you have to hit the right spot for sure.
Yeah, that was actually my next question was about, you know, you've got unmistakable voices with these series, Ilan, you've got Sir David Attenborough, and Raphaelle, you've got Sigourney Weaver. So how much do you consider, you know, their voices when you're creating the music?
Well, a lot for me. I mean, I think it's, you know, for me, it's like David Attenborough's the lead singer of the band, right?
Yeah, and same here. Actually, it's funny because I mostly worked to a scratch audio that was a male voice. And, you know, the whale societies are very much dominated by female, like female whales play a paramount role in those societies. And the fact that when I knew that Sigourney Weaver was coming on board, and then when I heard her voice, I think like maybe 30% of the show I scored to her voice. It felt so right. There's this warmth, you know, in her voice, this depth that is almost like motherly and reassuring, that I found was so on spot for the show, and I was thrilled that she was part of it.
Both series have a very serious underlying message to them. You know, the impact of the climate crisis, loss of biodiversity. really the sort of heavy human footprint that we're leaving on the natural world. And I wonder, do you think that music has a role when it comes to inspiring people, either environmentalism or, you know, sort of greater awareness of climate change?
Yes, I mean, I think music has throughout the ages has played a role, and especially in, you know, throughout the last century, played a really important role in social and political movements. And so I don't see why it can't play a role here as well. You know, what I really was inspired by in one of the in the humans episode, they had school age. They had school age activists talking, and as I said, I was at home with my daughter the whole time, and so I just became very aware of this, you know, the way that I was teaching my daughter to recycle, and that, you know, we're leaving this planet for the next generation, and you know, these thoughts really played on my mind, and I'd written this theme that ran through the show, and my daughter kept singing it back to me, which is quite unusual. She's normally not interested in anything I'm doing at all. But and so I thought, oh, this is quite a simple theme, and maybe children could sing it. And when the lockdown lifted over here in the UK, the timing was kind of perfect. And so I got several children's choirs to come and sing on the show. And those kids from those schools were very inspired and very excited to be a part of it. And so maybe in some way it helped to educate them a little bit more. And you know, Raphaelle was talking about that you're going to be doing shows, and I would love to be able to do something like that with children's choirs. You know, something we've talked about, but we'll see if it happens. But I would love to inspire children and to help educate through music.
Yeah, I think same here. Like, again, music is such an important major part of those whale societies, you know. The fact that music is such a paramount part of the way they interact and communicate with each other, it's really, you know, it grounded me so much, because I realized that, you know, we tend to feel and think that music is a man-male thing, and that we created it. And I think that it was there way before us, and that nature is also, you know, kind of making its own music, and whales are such a prime example of that. And the fact that music is such a important part of our, you know, societies like human beings, it's another layer for me, you know, in this show of that just demonstrates how similar we are. And what I really love about this show is that it's not going to focus on how we have to blame ourselves for all the things we're doing wrong. There are tons of things we're doing wrong, definitely. But I also like that this is a new it's a new way of trying to reach people's mind and hearts, you know, just by showing them how similar we are, you know, to those animals, and that we are all sharing the same rock, and we're all the same. And I think that this is a very smart way to reach, you know, the audience and make them feel that they have to protect them, because by protecting them they protect themselves, they protect our own civilization as well. So yeah.
Ilan, you touched on this a little bit when you mentioned, you know, recycling with your daughter, but you both have really eclectic bodies of work. But do you feel sort of that this is working on these series have sort of changed you personally?
I don't know. Has it changed? That's a big question, isn't it?
Save that for the end.
Well, I think it's been such an extraordinary time, and that I think everyone has, across the globe, humanity has been affected. It's quite hard to separate that experience from my musical creative life, because my musical creativity is related to that experience, and then to have been working on something that in so many ways is connected to the pandemic and to what's happening in the world in general. Has I certainly learned more about the climate. I thought I was quite conscientious and quite educated. I thought I knew quite a lot about climate. I feel a bit silly saying that to you, but I did, and I'd read about it and I cared about it a lot. But after working on the series, I realized that actually I know very little, and I need to know more, and I need to educate myself more. But how much the show changed me versus how have I been changed or affected over the last year, that's hard to judge.
Yeah, it's so true. It's hard to judge, given that it happened at the same time. And there was also this thing that happened that felt that I had this kind of big disconnection, from the rest of the world, because we all had to isolate, and at the same time with that, at the exact same time, I was connecting with another layer of our planet, through those animals. And I've learned so much about it, and I felt really humbled by that. And I am glad that it actually happened at the same time, because I think that it made me even more receptive and, aware of the key things that we should all learn watching this show. And I think it would probably didn't have had the same impact if it was not during a pandemic. And yeah, for sure.
And then as a final question to you both, then, what do you hope the audiences take away from these series?
I hope that people take away more education about the planet, the idea that each individual has to take more responsibility in whatever way that is, and that also we all have a responsibility to educate the next generation about the condition of the planet, and what we need to prepare them for what they're going to inherit, because it's going to be a different place to the world that we grew up in. People will argue about how different it will be. You get some very extreme point of views, and some point of views that say it won't be all that different at all. But I think everybody now agrees that it will be different. So I feel that responsibility very strongly, and I hope that people who watch A Perfect Planet will see that and take that on board.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. I feel like I'm optimistic in a way that I feel like there are much more way we can leverage that than I thought we had, in our hands. And it also includes entertainment. And I've really realized through this series that this is incredibly powerful if we're doing it the right way. And I think it's a wonderful way to educate the next generation. My son is a little young, but I hope that very soon I will be able to show him, this show and others and many others. And I think I think we are very lucky, and I feel very lucky to be able to, have those kind of signals and messages go through. like through art, through our music, and through something that people actually enjoy watching. And I totally agree. I think education is like maybe 90% of the job, and I am optimistic because I feel like there's more knowledge and sensitivity in the next generation, and I feel like they are more aware of we've ever been about all those things, and I hope they won't hate us for that later on. But yeah, I'm pretty optimistic about it, and it includes the consequences of the pandemic, and the like series like The Perfect Planet and Secrets of the Whales.
I think that's a good optimistic note to stop on. Thank you both so much for your thoughts and for telling us all about the series.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.